Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're watching us from. This is Civic Space TV. My name is Douglas Onen, and today I am joined by students from the Hope Initiative chapter of Gulu University. Tonight, we are going to have a conversation around the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961 to date. And of course, we are going to talk about Uganda's unending quest for a credible, free, and fair election. To join me to discuss this very robust and interesting topic, which of course informs the theme of this year's 2025 or season 5 of the Inter-University Debates Interface, I am joined by students from Gulu University. I'm joined by Opendi, Rodrick, Godlive, who will help us unpack this conversation. Right next to Mr. Opendi, Rodrick, I am joined by Honorable Kanda-Ruku, Dominic, also a student from Gulu University. As well, I'm joined by Mr. Elisha, Kakanyero, who will also help us offer his insights in this conversation. Unfortunately, the lady, Joanne, is not with us today, but of course, we shall be looking forward to having her join us during the course of the conversation. So I'll just quickly give all of you, my guests, a chance to go ahead and unmute. Say hello to the viewers, and we'll dive straight into the conversation. Allow me to start with you, Opendi. Just unmute and say hello to the viewers, and the same with you, Kanda-Ruku, after Opendi, and then I will also have Kakanyero do the same. Opendi, over to you.
Hello viewers. I'm called Opendi Rodrick Godlive. Representing Gulu University, and I'm happy to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Opendi. We're very happy to have you here and looking forward to an interesting conversation. Kanda-Ruku.
All right, thank you. Hello, Civic Space. I greet you all, and my name is Dominic Kanda-Ruku from Gulu University, Hope Initiative Club chapter of Gulu, and I'm glad to be here, and I'll be open-minded to share with you.
Thank you. We're definitely going to be looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you. Kakanyero, Elisha, please as well say hello to the viewers.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Kakanyero Elisha Ogenrwot, a student of Gulu University, member of the Hope Initiative Club of Gulu University. Yeah, so I'll be looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully my insights change how you perceive the elected place of Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me to start with you, Opendi Rodrick, once again. The conversation today, we are looking at the credibility of the 1961 elections today. But of course, we ask an interesting question, which relates to the unending quest for a free, credible, and fair election. Now, let's just have a historical perspective to this conversation. Please give us a historical narrative to Uganda's historical or electoral journey. Opendi.
Okay, thank you on that. And diving into straight in what you have said on historical journey and stuff. On the basis of election, if we would look at the definition of election, probably where you elect your representatives, or choose someone to go and represent in office. Coming into that, we find that the election staff probably came into Uganda. That was brought in under the government, and Museveni, we could probably say the NRA, which probably shifted to the NRM. That is in basis of election and stuff. Now, I know that someone outside there may wonder that what processes have we probably gone through to probably achieve our leaders and stuff. Now, when you look at the year 1961, that's probably when we have not yet had independence and go on to have independence in 1962. So we find that we have had series of transitions and of leaders, but these transitions have not been probably through elections and stuff. These have been through things of war or overthrowing. We have had several governments. We have had probably we started by the Kabaka going into the Obote and stuff. But the whole idea is that even when we had these transitions and stuff, these ruling people who were in power had the aspect of political parties or stuff, which would bring in an element of election, but we didn't have election where people would be elected to do to actually choose their leaders and stuff. So now till when the NRM government comes in, which would also be something that I would love to support on the aspect of credibility. Because when you look at the word credible, is something maybe trustworthy, something maybe that gives you a chance and stuff. So we find that now when the NRM government comes in, it gives in an opportunity of election, brings in things of multi-party systems and stuff. Therefore, we'll be in position to have election, and for the first time during his regime and stuff, Uganda as a country goes on to have series of elections. Irrespective of the outcomes in tonight's discussion, would go ahead to discuss and see whether the elections have really been free and fair. But I feel on the basis of credibility in that history, at least I would credit them for making it or bringing it to light, to acceptance that really people really need to choose their leaders and stuff. I think that's the basic history I can give, yeah, in terms of the elections, how they moved in from 1961 until Museveni came in 1986 and probably brought about the changes in the constitutions by around 2001 to 2005, where we had now to start having elections. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that constitutional history that you just laid there. Allow me then at this point invite Honorable Kanda-Ruku. Kanda-Ruku, from that historical background, I'm interested in how would you assess the credibility of Uganda's first election in 1961 and 1962. In your opinion, do you think they were a foundation, or is it a betrayal of democratic practice? You're muted. Just unmute, please. Kanda-Ruku,
Okay.
please unmute.
Okay.
Yes,
can I be heard now?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for that great idea. It is a nice thing to share about an aspect of civic awareness. This is something to do with civic education. So based on the idea of the first election Uganda had in 1961, I will say the 1961 Ugandan general election was something to do with a significant milestone, let's say, in the journey of Uganda's independence, because probably it gave Ugandans the mandate and the freedom to actually vote for their leaders way back in 1961 and things like that. And I think having political parties ready to participate within that sphere, let's say the Democratic Party, that actually won many seats. I think, if I remember very well, maybe things like up to 82 seats, and UPC taking even seats, and other political parties. It was a sort of inclusion already within the democratic sphere. However, let's say the aspects of the 1961 election, I think I could criticize a few things. Actually, the idea of having Buganda, aspects of Buganda kingdom actually boycott elections because of the Kabaka Yeka saga and things like that. Let's say the kingdom boycotted the elections, citing concerns over representation and autonomy and things like that. So this boycott, to myself, as a personal opinion, I think the boycott led to, let's say, lower voter turnout, especially in Buganda. And if I contrast that with what happens right now, despite the fact that there is now there's wide participation in all ethnicities across Uganda right now, there is still an aspect of Buganda kingdom from that historical perspective, having to do with dictating, I mean, what kind of influence, let's say, a presidential candidate can actually have, which is why I see presidents like Museveni concentrating a lot on Buganda this time around, because that is where, because of the historical aspect, they then need to evaluate the credibility of election because of what they actually did way back. But to conclude on, let's say that the elections were crucial in shaping Uganda and its path to independence, and highlighting that the shift from the colonial power to the native power is something that should happen through a democratic practice, and that was the election. However, the controversies will now lie between things like, in the current world of Uganda, let's say we talk about delayed voter education, we talk about insufficient funding by electoral commission. We can even talk about potential of electoral violence that happen here and there. Let's say there are some political parties that actually overshadow others, or even using government organs like military or whatever to be able to cap down and have more influence on other political parties, claiming that there is a sort of freedom of participation, but the freedom is actually something that is undermined. So those controversies then, I think they were not ideas that were carried from the first election. I think these are ideas that now came up later on.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that fair assessment. I do agree from the foundation that you've laid. And I think something that I now want to engage Ogenrwot on is what you've just assessed there. You've given us your assessment on whether the 1961 and 1962 general election laid a foundation of betrayal, or rather a foundation of democratic practice. And from your assessment, you seem to agree that the 1961 and 1962 general elections was one, it laid particularly a foundation for some sort of democratic practice. Though you are still on your submissions, you still show that there is some sort of betrayal along there. But of course, that is your assessment. But allow me get to Elisha. Elisha, something that I'm interested in is on the patterns of electoral malpractice. Something that, of course, predates back in our historical journey. But the question to you directly is, what patterns of electoral malpractice can be traced across different regimes from 1961 to date, and how has it directly affected us, the young people? Elisha.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, once again. Am I audible enough?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, great. So before I actually get to answer your question, I think I'm going to have to disagree with Dominic, because when you look at the 1961 and the 1962 elections that took place in Uganda, it wasn't exactly like the background for the democratic, it wasn't the I would say the foundation that Uganda needed for its democratic system to be built on. One, let's look at like the nature of like the political parties that were actually in Uganda or participate in the elections, and the ways in which they were formed. We had the Kakanyero in 1962, we had Uganda People's Congress, we had the Democratic Party. Those were the three major parties, or the ones that history teaches everyone about. But then when you look at like the Democratic Party, one, it was formed basically, majority of its members were Catholics. Uganda People's Congress, it was a party that was formed for majorly the Anglicans. Meanwhile, the Kakanyero was basically a party that was formed for the Baganda to front for, their Kabaka to actually become the president of Uganda or the leader of Uganda. So basically, the background of our democracy then was formed on sectarianism, not on like the choices or the autonomy that were given to people, but because of like the kind of affiliations that people have to specific religions or to specific tribes and stuff like that. Things like tribalism and religious segregation are things that started right from like, the start of democracy in Uganda, and as something like that. But then also when we're looking at, let's say, electoral malpractices, I think there have actually been a vast cases of those, obviously, because over time you look at, okay, let's begin from 1961. We had these parties coming through, right? We had these parties being formed based on like religions and tribes. 1962 then, still religions and tribes, but then now Obote as a wise man decides that, you know what, I'm not going to probably beat Democratic Party because there are a lot more Catholics than there are Anglicans. So he chooses to side with the Kakanyero because of like the agenda setting powers that the Baganda had the Baganda had then, and Dominic still tells you that the Baganda still have in status quo, right? That to me, I feel like it's already sort of a malpractice, or it kind of influences the decision that people are going to make. It gives you the illusion that you have the autonomy to make the right choice for you, but then at the end of the day, people were making choices based on the kind of tribes that they are, or because of the religious affiliations that they had to. That to me, even if like the election was probably fair, it still sounds like a malpractice. Fast forward, then we have Obote kind of making Uganda a republic, throwing the Kabaka under the bus and reducing like, the powers that political parties had and things like that to kind of influence things in his favor. But then after that, I don't think there was really an election post 1966, 1967 till around the 1980s, where Obote comes back and takes over power, like in his second regime and things like that. But still, again, it was a fraudulent way of getting into power. Why? Because people believe that he actually, okay, he was one being supported by the Tanzanian forces and things like that, but then also he kind of, rigged the votes into his favor. That still didn't end there. We then have the 1996 elections. Observers say, oh, obviously it was fair, but the losers in Paul Semogerere believe that it wasn't an election that was actually, very fair or free, and they cite irregularities. Why? Because of like the kind of power that NRA at the time, had and stuff like that. And that just increases from the no party policy to the single party system to then us moving into the multi-party system, where we actually now begin to notice like the real malpractice I would call it malpractice when it comes to elections, right? 2006, everyone who reads or everyone who actually has access to information kind of believes that Besigye won, but then apparently results say otherwise, and Museveni was declared the leader. 2011, Besigye gets tortured. Besigye gets tortured basically as an electoral candidate. He gets arrested. He doesn't have like the chance to actually campaign, reach out to people and things like that. And still at the end of the day, we have the incumbent president going through with the elections. 2016, almost the same stories. This time around, we have Besigye being placed under house arrest and things like that. 2021, then we have, I think, what would be the biggest. Okay, we have always had security forces acting out in favor for ruling governments right from the time that Obote was a president. But 2021, I think that's when we witnessed it the most as a country, where under one protest that people were trying to, advocate for like the freedom of Robert Chagulanyi, a presidential candidate at the time, who had been arrested on his campaign trails. We have like the death of 58 innocent civilians or something like that. Numbers could probably go more, or probably, okay, numbers probably went way more, but those were like the people that they were reported about. You get like that kind of violence that was meted out towards innocent civilians that were just trying to protest and advocate for like the release of their presidential candidate. But then also I believe this year, much as we haven't had any kind of activity, still there have still been irregularities. Why? Because at the end of the day, okay, not irregularities in the sense that there have been human rights violations and things like that. Yeah, we have had the arrest of I don't know how to pronounce their name well, but Mubarak, Munyagwa or something like that. I'm not a Muganda, I don't know how to pronounce the name. There was an arrest, but then also it goes beyond that particular arrest, right? At the end of the day, when you look at the people that are going up against the incumbent president, there are people, they need to reach out to their voters, right, to kind of influence the decisions that these voters would make. But at the end of the day, they have way less resources compared to what like the incumbent president have. Whenever you move to any major city across the country, you're going to find a huge billboard poster of like the incumbent president, vote, protect against, and things like that. Meanwhile, someone like Robert Munyagwa probably doesn't have the funds. And some presidential candidates, I think two of them actually in this past week actually stayed off the campaign trails. Why? Because they cited that they do not have like the necessary finances to actually reach out to people and then kind of influence their decisions, or sorry, reach out to people and campaign to get their votes and things like that. These are irregularities that kind of exist in a world where democracy is something that we truly value. Then Uganda, has a country, will try to make sure that all its presidential candidates reach out to all its citizens in a kind of free and fair manner, providing things like billboards, or not just limited budgets of 100 million to like each presidential candidate. But then that aside, I think it has had a huge impact on the young people. Why? Because one, it has reduced interest in participation in politics, because at the end of the day, you feel like you already know whoever is actually going to go through in any political or in any democratic process when it comes to elections, such as presidential elections. Very few young people, I think actually, according to the statistics, around 60% of the people who are above like the voting age between 18 to 35 showed up to actually register in like the voters register and stuff like that. The other 40% are not interested, because at the end of the day, they believe there is already a result, doesn't matter what they choose. But then also outside that, the money politics has actually gotten into the young people, where if they're getting into the democratic process, if they're voting, they're not voting because they believe that this is the best person for them or the best person for the country. They're voting because their decisions are actually influenced by who gives them the most kind of money and gives them immediate satisfaction or gratification. And that is something that we have witnessed over time.
All right, Elisha, you have given us a very wonderful overview. And your analysis shows your understanding, and you're trying to show us that the pattern of electoral malpractice has just gone beyond the ballot stuffing and the vote rigging that we know. It comes down to ways of negatively influencing candidates from even getting onto the campaign rail, among other notable examples that you have given us. But I just want to hold you there, because conversations relating to how the young people are being influenced negatively and how they're looking at politics, but also monetization of politics, is something that we shall tackle as we go further into the conversation. But one thing that stands out for me in your analysis, in trying to identify the pattern of an electoral malpractice when we trace back to history, is you identified that the issue of sectarianism has been something that has been very negative to our politics, and it's a malpractice, in your opinion, that has laid a foundation of betrayal. Let me hold you there and bring in Opendi. Opendi, from that backdrop, I'm interested to understand to what extent have historical experiences of disputed elections, something that we have seen. The elections of 2006 were disputed. The elections of 2010 were disputed. The elections of 2016 were disputed. The elections of 2021 almost were disputed, but because the candidate did not have enough time, of course, the elections were disputed, but it was still thrown out of court. So we have had a history of contested elections. Even in 1980, the elections of 1980 were greatly contested, and history books have it that is what justified the NRA, now NRM, to go into the bush. So the question to you is, to what extent have historical experiences of disputed elections shaped Uganda's political culture? Opendi. And the same question I also fire it to you on Kanda-Ruku. Opendi? All right, Kanda-Ruku. I think I've lost Opendi there. Maybe just respond to the question. Unmute and respond. To what extent have historical experiences of disputed elections shaped Uganda's political culture? Please unmute. You're muted. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. As I said, I'm going to give ideas from my open mind point of view. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that great question. I think I can start from this particular perspective of having first of all the affection of electoral disputes, especially, let's say, all these things they are centered within the presidential election. So I want to firstly agree with what Mr. Elisha Kakanyero actually said, that okay, not in his words, but I think he's able to notice that the ruling party or the government in power has actually been able to let's say to manipulate, or let's say to overshadow all other affairs of democracy, which is why even when there is a contention, even when there is a dispute of presidential election or some kind of result or some kind of petition, and then you realize that at the end of the day, this government in power is actually able to do everything possible to make sure that the results, the outcomes, whether they are legal outcomes or even the outcomes socially within society, because society also has its own dispute, though they may not be taken positively by the government. So at the end of the day, the outcome actually remains in favor of the government in power. That is it. So the first effect I can say is once there is a contention, I think it leads to contentious politics at the end of the day. I mean, how can I explain this? Let's say disputed elections have led to things like the cult of contentious politics in terms of opposition parties questioning the legitimacy of government, the ruling government in particular. So that is it. This is one thing they now call corruption of the law. The government in power is able to breach the running constitution, the constitution currently Uganda has, in their own favor, which is why just in my introductory statement, I said that the first irregularity of politics is that of democracy is that the law is not made available to people. So at the end of the day, even when there's contention, and political parties are able to call out government for the sitting government for being unjust and fair, or having commercialized sort of legal proceedings. At the end of the day, on the side of the common man, the law is not made available. So the only thing they know is yellow is the best, and that is all. And what is the proof? The results are there. They do not actually understand how these results come about. What they know is even those who do not vote and then agree that yellow is the best. So the contentious politics is an impact of okay, having continuous contentious politics is an impact. It's an affection that comes out of having electoral disputes and petitions and things like that. But secondly, let's say generally there is now, because of this, once there is a contention, then there is already loss of, it is erosion of trust in the government, trust in the law, trust in socio-economic affairs. I mean, in terms of how they are actually led, how they are governed. So that happens repeatedly because, let's say, if Ugandans believe that 2006 election, at least out of all, at least the 2006 election was, let's say, won by Besite at the end of the day, but because of the agenda setting power, though negatively, the sitting government then has, they are then able to manipulate people's trust. And then the few allies, I can say the few allies are able to actually lose trust in government. And that is why I can now accept the saying that goes that when a wise man does not take up the responsibility to lead, and then they should be ready to be ruled by fools. So that is it. So the few allies then lose trust in the government, and that's all. And instead of them taking up the responsibility to actually take up democratic principles to bring law to the face, they then shy off. They shy off. At the end of the day, those the few, okay, the majority common man that complains, their voices are actually not heard because they do not have capacity at the end of the day, which is why the trust is lost totally. But maybe I can now conclude on this idea by saying another impact could look at human rights abuse at the end of the day. Yeah, the history of disputed elections has, let's say, it was marked by severe human rights abuses at the end of the day, including, let's say, arrests. Mr. Kakanyero mentioned things about, though it has not yet happened, in 2021, we had several occasions where the Excellency Chagulanyi was arrested. A case in point was in Arua city, where his rally was distorted by military, and then he was able to be arrested. And before people knew it, he was in the 4th Division barracks of Gulu or something, Chief Magistrate Court, whatever. So then that is a gross human right violation at the end of the day. I could bring something, though it may not match today's. Let's say because of the human right violation in a bid to make sure that the sitting government, the ruling government, remains right. And then during COVID, I remember a very funny incident where, for example, in a district where I come from, in Germany, you'll find out that in a month, okay, in let's say in a week, the number of victims that succumb to gun bullets, the number of people killed by military during the implementation of curfew is actually more than the number of people that die of COVID. So that is a gross human rights violation. And how does it come about? The executive that shadows all the other organs of government then says, at this time you should implement the law. regardless of protecting the people that you're supposed to implement the law upon. So they just become harsh upon their own people they should protect. So they then end up killing them at the end of the day. So those are insights I can have about election contention. So it becomes a contentious politics time and again. We see the erosion of trust at the end of the day, but then we see when there is no trust, then there is human rights abuse.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Kanda-Ruku, for that submission. Opendi, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back. I actually blacked out, but I'm back for now.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe you could turn on your video. The question is, to what extent have historical experiences of disputed elections shaped Uganda's political culture? Just before you dropped off, Kanda-Ruku was giving us his insights on the same. Let's have your opinion too.
Okay.
Opendi? Are you with us?
Am I audible?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm getting you now.
Yeah, the question is, to what extent...
Basing on the history back...
Yes, hello. Opendi, proceed.
Yep. Okay, I think to a greater extent, it has shaped Uganda's political stuff in a poor way that most of the people are depressed, because I would buy some ideas from Kanda-Ruku in the aspects of oppression. I find that most voters who have been coming in to vote have been oppressed and stuff. Then I think another idea is compromising of the opposition. If you look at how oppositions have been weakened by governments is probably by compromise elections that they do take place. Because if you look at like the current government, all those current systems, you look at the MAOs and the staff, that you find that the trick they have used is always compromising with these people in the opposition and being in position to absorb them. Now, by them absorbing them, this one loses, makes people who have maybe fronted these opposition people to try and bring change or probably remove the ruling government in respect to their interests, probably lose hope in them and each and everything. Now, on the aspect of losing hope and each and everything, I could say a higher percentage of the voters have maybe lost confidence that if you find the tally in which people turn up for elections, be it presidential, be it MPs and stuff, people have lost hope because people already know the outcome. Now, the aspect of the outcome comes in regards to the disputes that we have experienced, because having a number of the occasions of the 2-6, of the 2-12, and each and everything where we have had the Chagulanyis, we have had the Beshiges and stuff, we find that these current disputes that have been in position to take place have really showed the sign of weaknesses that we have in our elections and stuff, because it paints a picture that it's credible, that it's fair, that it gives everyone an opportunity to participate. But in the hand light, it has already an end goal that it's supposed to achieve, that we all know the winner and stuff. That's where we find that there are some other people who really don't take interest in it and stuff. Then the last thing I would like to say, it's one of behaves like a democratic stuff. But if we look at other stuffs or lineages that people have been fighting to achieve power and stuff, if you look at how the NRA came to power, you look at how other people, irrespective of the elections that we had in existence, you find that this has frightened even other people and made people lose their confidence in hands to come and show up for elections and stuff. To the extent that if you're someone who works with the opposition, you have had drones coming to abduct people and stuff. People are living in fear that, when you're with the opposition, you're either compromised and join them, or you're killed, or you're dropped in vans and each and everything and stuff. I think now our historical perspective didn't lay grounds because we feel that all these ruling governments and stuff and the people who all people of selfish interests, all people who were based on things to deal with religious affiliations, tribalism and stuff, which I buy on the area and the earlier ones. Stuff. So generally, I would say that it's historical background. After I feel the historical background did have that, I feel that if it had shape, it has that its citizens follow that would know maybe we have a and stuff that and everything. Our political arena within the country is up to date, good. If you follow up to now, that the constitution is also compromised, that the constitution says this, but very many people go against it. The stuff. So on generally basis, when you do feedback and interact with the youth, like the people who are really willing bodies, they have lost trust in government. Are people who have made for their own interest or who want to gain probably the money that you get in it, probably appoint the ministers that you want, your members and see control, because you can even see clearly the current government what the thing from the son, from the brothers and everything. It's more something of nepotism in context. What I feel it has really shaped the culture poorly, let people lose confidence to a greater extent. A few people are participating, and they are not more. We find that there are also very many elderly in their 90s, in their hundreds, they're still contesting, and the context of which you have to side with the ruling government for you in order to survive in this political stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are very interesting insights. Elisha, I'm interested in, of course, the 1995 Constitution. This is a document that, to many, they say is a document that is a progressive constitution. And it has, of course, most of us, or all of us on this call, we have, under the 1995 Constitution, at least witnessed the last 6 elections. The question to you, therefore, is the 1995 Constitution promised free and fair elections. 30 years later, in your opinion, has it delivered on that promise? Elisha.
The 1995 Constitution promised free and fair elections. I would say it has successfully given us elections. That's true. Whether those elections are free and fair, that's a topic that's up for discussion, and that's something that can take us days if you're to start the discussion. But then I honestly believe that at the end of the day, the Constitution has actually been something that has been manipulated to actually mete out the most of like the electoral irregularities that we see. But then also it's something that has been, I would say, updated or amended depending on who it suits best. And in this particular case, we are talking about the people who hold, like, the people who are staying in power longer than they should have been, or something like that. These are people that have amended the constitution to kind of suit their interests. For instance, for starters, when the legislators were coming up with like the constitution, it was an open committee or something like that. It had legislators, people from the judiciary, representatives from tribes and all that. The point they were given was that at the end of the day, every presidential candidate would, only have 2 terms. But then outside those 2 terms, there was also still like the age limit and things like that. One, we see like that the term limit that was placed being successfully removed in 2005. Why? Because this was to favor, like, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to cling on to power in the 2006 elections. The 2006 being like one of the elections that have been most contested, having the most contested results to date. But then that's just one thing. Secondly, fast forward then to 2015, we see, because, our president has already hit, like, almost hitting the age limit. Then we have again still the Parliament of Uganda going to, amend this particular constitution to make sure that it still suits, like, the particular group of people, that is to say the ruling party, so that we have, our president still going ahead to contest beyond like the age limit. So it has promised for us elections, that it has promised elections that are free and fair, but over time we have seen it being used as a tool or as something that is, one, a tool that is used to mete out irregularities, but then secondly, it's also something that is quickly changed or updated or amended depending on who it suits at that particular moment in time. I've given you those examples already, and this is something that if it was to promise, if it was to deliver on its promise of free and fair elections, then maybe we should have had some sort of what's it called, a provision where at the end of the day things like the term limit or the age limit are not exactly things that are changed, especially when we're approaching elections, or changed by a president who is in power or has already hit the limit that he had, that has already hit the limit that the constitution mandates them to subscribe to, something like that. Those are things that we should have had the constitution provide for. But since then it had those loopholes. It has been a tool that has been weaponized to actually mete out like the irregularities that we actually witness in today's electoral or democratic scene. Basically, that's what I think of the constitution. It has grossly failed to deliver the free and fair elections. It has delivered elections, yes, but then it's something that has been used to, not give us the free and fair elections we so much wanted to.
All right, interesting. So it's your assertion that 30 years later, the 1995 Constitution has not delivered on its promise of a free, credible, and fair election. Let me get to you, Kanda-Ruku. I am interested in the current electoral framework under the 1995 Constitution. We are quite aware that this Constitution introduces the Electoral Commission. And according to the framework, the Electoral Commission is appointed by the chairman of the Electoral Commission is appointed by the president. And with those powers of appointing the chairman of the Electoral Commission, this has raised eyebrows. They're saying that you cannot have an executive and the president of a country go ahead and appoint the chairman of the Electoral Commission, because they are, of course, conflicted when it comes to announcing of results. So, Kanda-Ruku, the question is, does the current electoral framework under the 1995 Constitution adequately safeguard the independence of the Electoral Commission, or you think otherwise?
Okay, all right. That's an interesting one. Actually, we could have started from there, by the way. Yeah, I must say we could have started from there. And in case this video is going to leak elsewhere, this is for the sake of this, because I know how this government can be very bad. Anyway, now, as Mr. Elisha just said, the 1995 Constitution is actually delivering elections. Yeah, including having people to organize election. That's one thing. Having the election and people to organize it, and that is the so-called the Independent Electoral Commission. It was the Electoral Commission of Uganda, and then it became the Independent Electoral Commission of Uganda, so that the NRM government thought it was actually empowering the Electoral Commission to suit the demand, the desire of comparative democracy of, let's say, outside world, because we actually do comparative analysis of how other worlds actually have their elections and how do the spheres within their electoral commission actually run. So to me, I think by the time, let alone the fact that the constitution was already biased, it was actually tailored to make sure that if we are going to have an election, and then the sitting president should be the one to appoint. I think before 1995, this was not the case. Yeah. So by the time the constitution then says permits, let's say, parliament through an act, or let's say through an executive order, to have an independent electoral commission. From the time the electoral commission became independent, actually contest on elections actually became worse, because at the end of the day, being independent alone meant that the president had to and still has to, if he's going to change the electoral commission of Uganda, then he had to appoint this independent choice. That's the comparative I make. So independent president with independent choice to have an independent and let's say an independent framework of how the election results will come. Now, this is why I think having the president or the executive appoint the electoral commission is actually one way of already suppressing the free and fair election ideology that the constitution claims to be having at the end of the day, which is why we now start to buy in ideas like, let's say, the philosophical politicians, the ancient politicians like style on that says, the most important person that matters is not the one who votes. It's the one who counts the vote. And that is where the Electoral Commission loses independence. Anyone else can vote. It's okay. The election can be free and fair. But the one who counts the vote is the one that matters at the end of the day, because he decides which votes will go where. But when you're voting, you're allowed to choose where your votes will go. So I think, Chair, on that idea, I still have a standard. By the time the Electoral Commission became independent, by adding that word independent, and then carried more independent choices based on the choice of the president who appoints, not the choice of the nation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that very passionate submission. Opendi, I have a follow-up to that question. The submission of Kanda-Ruku is very succinct on grounds that the word independent electoral commission is in a way more philosophical in a nature that they carry out independent decisions at the end of the day, not the decisions of the people who vote, but the decisions based on the people who put them in those positions. And the follow-up to you is, should therefore the appointment of the electoral commissioners remain a prerogative of the president, or should Uganda explore independent selection mechanisms? Unfortunately, we have lost Opendi, but let me fire that question to you, Elisha. Elisha, the follow-up is, should the appointment of electoral commissioners remain a prerogative of the president, or should we as a country explore independent selection mechanisms in the quest for free, fair, and credible elections?
Okay, so one, I would love the idea of us having an independent, what's it called, independent election body, right? Where the head of the electoral commission isn't someone that is appointed by the president, because at the end of the day, if the president appoints you, it necessarily means that is in a position to take you out of your position, out of the powers that you hold, or the position that you hold at like is convenient. So anytime that he wields it, right, something of the sort, and that takes away like the whole ideology of the independence of the electoral body. But then also, I think at the end of the day, we still need a mechanism in which we choose the president, not the president, we choose the chairman of the electoral commission, or the people that work within the electoral commission itself, the people counting our votes, like Kanda-Ruku is telling you. That necessarily means that we would still need a way of, like, if we are going independent, we would need something like an agency to hire this particular person basing on like meritocracy or technocracy or something like that. But then the whole ideology is, the whole idea or the whole reason why I'm saying that we should still stick with the president appointing these people is, at the end of the day, the president or whoever holds the power in such a setting in a democratic system as Uganda's still has the agenda setting power. We could still say that let's award this person or hire this person independently, not appointed by the president, but the president could still have like the agenda setting power or the preference setting power to, influence the person who gets into such a particular position in manners that are not obviously open like we have right now. So that would mean like backdoor mechanisms, and we already know of blames, or we already know of a lot of allegations of things like nepotism and things like that in like the whole hiring sector in the public service sector of Uganda, and things such as those already exist to get. So I'd rather we continue with the devil that we know, instead of bringing in like a new angel that we do not know of, or a new angel that comes with a lot of ways around it, and we can't exactly hold the new angel accountable. Why? Because now you can't hold the hiring agency accountable. But like, if you know that the president appointed, the chairman of the electoral commission, and you see that he's obviously being biased to probably protect his position, there are ways in which you can call out you can call out such a person in that particular point in time. But then also it necessarily means that it's easier for you to contest these results. Why? Because it's easier for people to believe that the person that was appointed by the president is trying to favor the president than when it's someone who is independent and hired in a manner that you actually don't understand. But then secondly, I believe it still doesn't exactly work if you're to get something independent, because the president still appoints most of like the people within the country, from like the judiciary to people in the public service to people in all the other sectors, you get. So we are basically saying, okay, let us now hire a chairperson of the electoral commission, but the president is still going to appoint who gets to head the committee of hiring an independent electoral commission, you get. So he still has a kind of say in it long term. So I think it's better for us to leave it open. It's better for us to have ways. It's better for us to leave it open with the president like it is right now. But we should just come up with ways of making sure that we can hold these people particularly accountable, regardless of what the president thinks or regardless of what, regardless of who appoints them into that particular position that they have taken, because they do not serve only the interest of the president by taking that office, they serve the interests of everyone else. Yeah.
All right. Elisha, allow me to stick with you. I want us to shift gears and talk about democratic practice as I come back to you, Kanda-Ruku. From that conversation, they've just told us that we need to stick with the current status quo because it is the most viable option. But we have witnessed internet shutdown in 2021 elections. Of course, 2021 elections was quite unique. We had COVID-19, the so-called scientific campaigns, among others. But recently, also during the same electoral cycle, we saw that some contestants were denied access to certain stations on ground on reasons best known to the individuals who denied them access. We have seen an issue to do with, of course, the brutality of the police, but also a conversation that you earlier on hinted on, monetization of this process, the financing, the political financing, which I think is important. So my question to you is, can an election in Uganda be truly free and fair in the absence of equal access to media, security, and financing? Elisha.
Rodrick, I lost you at some point.
Yes,
I lost you
question
at some point.
Yes,
about the monetization.
Yes, I was saying that we have had issues regarding our electoral cycle. Particularly, I'm giving an example. The context is 2021. The 2021 general election was quite unique, termed as scientific elections. And in those scientific elections, aspirants were required to use particular media channels. Of course, there was restricted access to some candidates, or there was no access to some of those candidates. There's an issue of the use of the force, the police and the military in the process, but also a conversation around financing. You earlier on hinted on monetized politics. So I have a follow-up question to you in that regard, that can an election in Uganda be truly free and fair in the absence of equal access to media, security, and financing? Elisha. Elisha? All right, let me just leave that question. Yes, Elisha, please go ahead.
Okay, I was saying, at the end of the day, it's virtually impossible to have a free and fair election without equal access to finances, to free and fair access to media or security. Because at the end of the day, let's begin with the media, right? When people are voting for like the leaders that they are choosing, we want them to exercise like the freedom of choice, their autonomy. But at the end of the day, they also need to make informed decisions, right? They need to get to know every presidential candidate or every candidate that they're actually voting for. They need to get to know what every candidate actually offers to them and why that particular candidate that they're going to choose for on that polling day is like the best option for themselves for themselves as an individual and also for like the country as a whole. That is why we need like the whole media. If you take away the media because we're having a scientific election and because now some presidential candidates do not have access to certain media houses, then one, you're taking away like the point of it being fair, because these people remember at the end of the day, elections are based, okay, we need people to like, choose the people that they're voting for, right? But at the end of the day, they need to make the decisions to vote for that particular person on like the right kind of information, or they need to make these decisions basing on what is actually best for them. So if you take away like that kind of autonomy, you reduce the options, you reduce their choice pool, then you're taking away the part of it being fair to like the other candidates, but then you're also taking away that freedom or the fairness from like the constituents, that is to say every citizen within the country. But then also secondly, when you look at security, I think at the end of the day, one thing that you notice in almost every sense of dictatorship, whether it's a mild dictatorship or a staunch one like Amin's, governments that are in power tend to use the security to actually kind of oppress people that have different ideologies to them. This can come in the forms of murders, in the forms of arrests, in the forms of changing the parts that you're taking to your campaign trail because of whichever security reason or justification that they're going to choose to give you. So in the sense that, you're trying to oppress people using the powers that you have, using the powers that you wield over the security forces, then it makes it kind of less legitimate as an election. Why? Because you kind of still reduce the access that your opponents have to the people that are going to vote for them, but then also you reduce the kind of access that the people have to like the information or the manifestos that these politicians who have different ideologies compared to you are going to give out to them during like the campaign periods. So I think in an ideal world, in a world where it's possible, the security force is something that we should rather look at it, making it completely independent. That is to say, maybe we can have a setting like the American Constitution, where obviously the president is the commander in chief and something like that. But then also, it still doesn't go ahead to make like what's it called, the military decisions or the security decisions without going to Congress first. We need such settings where at least we kind of enforce a certain level of independence for the security forces to make sure that it feels like they are less serving to like the people in power, but they are more serving to like the civilians outside there, because that is like their first kind of, the first obligation or the first duty of care is to like the people within such communities. And then thirdly, I believe that finances is a very important topic, especially for our context of Uganda. Why? Because when you go into the communities, I've actually been moving around trying to like do some sort of research. In actually they have a kind of saying, they call it Tengdudi or something like that, that when a politician comes and then they sit down to listen to the politician, they have to, remain with something that kind of compensates them for like that the particular time that they had or they wasted listening to the politician. That is like, I think, the easiest way to kind of interpret this. So that necessarily means that finances is
Elisha, looks like we have lost you. All right. Maybe when Elisha comes back, we shall have him conclude on his point. Kanda-Ruku. Kanda-Ruku, are you with us? Please unmute. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Multi-party dispensation was introduced in 2005 after a referendum. That means it was reintroduced again. And years down the road, approximately 15 years down the road or 20 years down the road, we are here having this conversation whether multi-party dispensation has made us progress as a democracy or it has made us regress. So my question to you is, has Uganda's multi-party system since 2005 enhanced or weakened electoral credibility?
All right, thank you. Thank you for this interesting question. Two ideas. Firstly, is that I must appreciate the fact that multi-party system in Uganda after 2005 was able to reshape like positively the electoral sphere, atmosphere of Uganda in, let's say, three aspects. Firstly, is that having people to participate within formal setups, I mean groupings like political parties, is an aspect of empowerment already. I mean, instead of centering everything within one person and let's say, let alone the aspect of, because elections are not weekly, they are not yearly. So throughout the year, these parties are able to impact different societies in Uganda through their campaigns, their enlightenment, their workshops, they set up, let's say, businesses. They even do some checks and balances. Once a bill is passed, there's an idea of passing a bill, there's an aspect of, let's say, parliamentary contention on particular topics, let's say on budgets. They directly do not speak in parliament, though the leader of opposition speaks. Even these others can go on press, they can organize press conference and give their views. The checks and balances they actually provide is something that at a point in time, government is able to buy. We have seen this happen, like government is able to buy. Let's say a case in point is when this is actually, I think, what brought the Excellency, His Excellency Chagulanyi, on board in Uganda when he led a strike, a demonstration that led to government to the government had to uplift like the OTT tax. Yeah, that was an aspect of opposition, an aspect of, though people power was not yet very formal, but I take that already as an achievement and a look already. So their participation is an aspect that empowers youth, let alone the negativities within the empowerment. And so I think giving a political elites, those who are very ambitious, chance to actually express themselves, because when you are the leader of a party, before Norbert Mao became the Minister of Justice, he was still the most, he was overrated as the most outspoken political leader under DP, and he was respected by government. So those ideas are something that shape politics in Uganda at the end of the day. But then on the other side,
as wind up on that point, yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, on the other hand, I think personally, the biggest problem I see with multi-party sectorism is the lack of loyalty. The lack of loyalty. At the point in time, right now, I had a very funny joke. I was in a bus, and then somebody was able to joke that if you're traveling in a bus, you need to be careful because you might not know you're traveling with a presidential aspirant. Parties are just growing up. Everybody wants to be the president. Everybody wants to open a party. And this distorts the minds of citizens on who to believe. Citizens do not know who to trust. And unfortunately, most of them do not stick to their party rules. They are easily coaxed. They are easily swayed away. Where is Matthias Puga right now? I mean, where is there are quite a number that actually shift from one party to another because they have some kind of wrangles, and because they have influence in Uganda, they have agenda setting power. People believe in them. So if this one shifts power, is like those, I'm sorry to say this, but the particular people who believe in a particular pastor. When the pastor changes church, they follow the pastor. They don't follow the God. They think the pastor is everything. So this distorts the minds of citizens on who to trust. So that is it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's an interesting viewpoint to handle multi-party dispensation. You first of all agree, then later on disagree. Quite interesting. Opendi, I'm very interested in the youth and civic participation. And as we edge towards the end of this conversation, an important question I think you should look at is the young people. And my question to you is, do Uganda's youth really believe in elections as a pathway for change, or have we lost faith in the ballot? Allow me to repeat the question. Do we as young people believe or have faith in elections as a pathway for change, or have we lost faith in the ballot? Opendi?
Thanks once again. Sorry for getting off. I've been having challenges, but eventually I'm back. I think generally, to a greater extent, the youth, so with the youth, because most of the youth, I think we have lost confidence in a way of maybe attaining any other leadership position or any transition of government. So probably we have lost faith in the democracy that we have, in the elections that we have, due to the existence of the disputes that we have faced and everything. I'll just give Kenya as a benchmark, because you look at how the Gen Zs have come up on media and each and everything. And then you look at the angle in which the youth of Ugandans also try to copy. It's not okay necessarily copying, but they also try to buy ideas like from what other countries are doing, so that they try implementing it. You can look at some of the demonstrations that they tried back ways in Kampala just of recent, because you look at how the youth have gone there. Some are moving naked, some are protesting and each and everything, even when they claim they are peaceful demonstrations and stuff. I think it still shows that they have lost confidence because of the existence of these demonstrations, even when these demonstrations are compromised with the armies and stuff, because you know the armies will of course come with the tanks, with the guns, with the tear gas and each and everything. It has really made them. Then on another aspect is on the level of the abuse of human rights that exists currently in relation to elections and stuff. We have people who have been abducted, we have people who have died, we have people who are missing up to today that we don't know where they are, just as a result of these elections. And you find because they've maybe been working with the opposition, or maybe they've been government spies, but they've fled away, they've gone to exile and stuff. So that all shows you the whole point that really we have lost hope, because now if you really see that people try demonstrating and each and everything, if you get to interact with the youth on one-on-one basis, they will tell you like voting probably is a waste of time, because at the end we know the person who is going to win. The whole purpose they opt for is maybe something of a demonstration and stuff, but the key question is who leads that demonstration, because first of all we live in a country which is fully protected, fully have ensured with peace and stuff, and any success of a demonstration is really cut off because it won't succeed, irrespective of it being violent or irrespective of it being chaotic or being peaceful. It won't succeed because the army is always there. It's on set the alert, because even the people whom we work with and stuff are always compromised and stuff. So I believe the youth have really lost confidence. If you just do a survey and stuff and ask people, do you think this? Everyone maybe thinks, I think the ruling government, maybe when he dies, maybe, or he goes by death, but I'm like, God forbid, that is when we feel we'll get a transition, because automatically someone new will come in. Then someone tells you that the son is maybe paving way for the son to come and take over the government and maybe rule or stuff. So generally, most of the people have lost. Now, what people have now turned into, they're just using it as an opportunity to maybe benefit and get something to eat, get some soda and stuff. If you realize in this ground politics or ground elections that take place, if you give me money, if you give me something, I'll give you my vote or stuff. It's because I've lost confidence in the idea that if I give you my vote, it may not count, because the person who is counting it may change it, or you may go ahead and change your mind, like maybe how the government has changed it, each and everything. So I think we have totally lost confidence and hopes and each and everything. To the Christians, we could probably be praying, and let's see if maybe God intervenes and gives us change. Thank you.
Thank you. Opendi, let me speak with you. Recommendations. What are your recommendations moving forward for us as we edge towards 2026? What recommendations would you make, and what would be your concluding or parting shots?
I think one of the recommendations, I know it takes a process, but one is to look into the constitutional review and stuff. There are really ideas which are, because one, as we were speaking earlier, we'd see that how the constitution has been compromised, even when we have independent bodies that directly run with the elections, like the constitution and stuff. Of course, the constitution, when you look at Article 61, it clearly defines the role of the constitution in what it does in things of the data analysis, the voters register, and each and everything. It also shows you how when the 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 army is supposed to be used, the police, of course the police is supposed to be used, let's say in cases of emergencies and stuff. But we find these elections, these are not emergencies, these are things that are scheduled in years to come, and we know that during this period in time and stuff, that to the extent that where they bring in things to deal with the army and stuff, this intimidates people and stuff. So I think they would rather bring this up for people to debate whether we really need the army, whether we really need the police to directly engage, because we find most people are intimidated. So those are some of the solutions that I suggest. One is on review. How do we review this? Let's review the constitution. Let's reconsider things of age limits and stuff.
and things to restrict the involvement of the army, the police, and each and everything, so that we realize that people have confidence, because we find the number of people who go on to lose their lives, the number of people whose rights are abused by these army, the police, and stuff. So another thing I recommend is on the aspect, however much we have security, we have peace and stuff, but the high level of abuse of human rights is high. So on the other aspect is vigilance. The solution I give is, you as an individual out there or a voter out there, you have to be so vigilant and know that anytime your life can go, because this is an African country and stuff. So you have to be very vigilant. You know whom are you working with. You know whether you're not easily compromised and each and everything. We probably seek for reforms, though we know reforms also take processes. But I believe by that, I think those are some of the solutions I could recommend, and people to probably stand with still their vote, not compromising their votes, because sometimes you never know, that would be the time where you have the time for transition. So just stick to your vote, irrespective of the irregularities that we have. But I think the things which should be worked on are the constitutions, the independent bodies, and other bodies which are involved in the constitution that overpower the electoral process.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those wonderful submissions you've made, but also the recommendations that you've made. Kanda-Ruku, your recommendations and concluding remarks.
All right, thank you. It was nice having me here, or having us here. So I have about 2 recommendations only ahead of the 2026 elections. Yeah, so this will be my second time to vote for a president. Yeah, I voted in 2021, and I'm going to vote this time round. So at least I don't speak from a third party point of view, from a first party point of view. Yeah, so I recommend firstly that especially, let me talk to the Gen Z in the rural Uganda, those that are up country. I mean, I highlighted the point of loss of trust. Yeah, when government behaves like this, those who even understand the law, or those who fairly understand democracy, then decide to fold their hands. I mean, they do not guide others. Yeah, they do not attend campaigns. The first thing I call upon Gen Z Ugandans who are going to vote is that they should be able to. It's a civic duty for you to participate in the electoral process. They should attend to the leaders. Yeah, yeah. When you attend to their campaigns, they are going to come to you this time round. They are going to avail themselves and come to us. Let's attend to them. We ask questions to them. Yeah, even the one that you think is, you deem that one very fit for a position, yeah, they may go through. But then how will you then hold them accountable after that? You didn't attend to them. What did they say? They have gone through years. What did they say? Which is why sometimes leaders change abruptly, because when those who understand democracy do not check this out by attending to the electoral process, then they miss out to actually hold them accountable. So I ask the Gen Z to participate in the electoral process, starting first of all by attending the campaigns and asking questions, but this should be done peacefully. Yeah, there should be no violence. I think we have not yet had those incidences yet of serious violence during electoral campaign. And secondly, I will now ask. I think the Gen Z is taking a perspective of this saying that what Kenyans cannot do does not exist. Yeah, yeah. This happened in a rural city during the declaration of the primary election result of the city mayor. Yeah. So I will ask the Gen Z and Ugandan stakeholders to allow the law to take its course. Yeah, yeah. When election is done, or when there are the electoral irregularities, nobody should take the law into their hands. Do not abuse. Do not do anything. Do not fight, because at the end of the day, in most of the strikes that Ugandans have in the rural societies where there is contention, at the end of the day, they are the ones who harm themselves. Once they get harmed within themselves while striking. So I ask them to actually let the law take its course at the end of the day, because the first way of defending the constitution, I think, should not be by breaking it again. Yeah, so that you can be able to tell your leaders or those in authority. The other time you did this wrongly, but we didn't do anything. We allowed the law to take its course. So that is what I asked. And from me to you, I think it is a nice thing to have a sharing of how the understanding of democracy works. Like, for example, it's something that Ugandan youth to actually learn, to actually know, understanding how your government runs, because as I said, in most cases the law is not made available to the common man. So when the youth can actually see it, you do not need to read the constitution or the Bible or what. In such sharings, you are able to get actually the scope of democracy, the state of democracy, and where you can actually participate. And your little participation can be able to scale the little impact up in the society. So
Right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Elisha, your recommendations and concluding remarks.
Recommendations for the Ugandan electoral process. Yeah, that's funny, and that's a very hard one. I think I wouldn't try to recommend on the policies or advocate for policy changes, because at the end of the day, it's not something that I believe is exactly feasible within the Ugandan context. But what I would recommend for is for the youth to actually turn up, for the young people to turn up. At some point when we were all being raised or trained in school, we sang this anthem in pre-primary and primary school, that we are the future, tomorrow's Uganda, things like that. So I think we are literally living in the tomorrow that we were actually raised to believe we are the future of. So it's about time that we actually stood up for the ideologies that we believed in. We stood up not to get money to benefit ourselves, but to actually make positive changes within our communities to be impactful, because it's just going to be some sort of a ripple or a cascade kind of effect. Like when 1 or 2 or 3 young people are doing something positive, they're going to eventually impact probably 10, 15 more. And if 3 other more people are doing that within their surrounding, it eventually goes ahead to impact like the lives of many others positively. So let's stand up, let's probably contest and take up elective positions. Let's not be the people that buy out votes. Let's also, go ahead and vote for things that we believe in and things that we believe in our country better, not just vote because we probably want a certain amount of money that only caters for us in a day or two and it's probably done. I think that would be my kind of recommendation. And it will be my concluding remarks as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elisha, Ogenrwot, Kakanyero, Kanda-Ruku, Dominic, and Opendi, Rodrick, for this wonderful conversation. But unfortunately, we weren't being able to be joined by the lady Joan. But of course, we would also have loved to have had her insights. But otherwise, it has been a very interesting and an insightful conversation presented by, of course, you, the able debaters from the Hope Initiative chapter of Gulu University. Personally, it has been a learning and thrilling experience, and I'll be looking forward to, of course, seeing you guys come through for the competitions soon enough. But to our dear esteemed viewers, the series of the inter-university debates is still going. Please continuously follow, watch the conversation, and don't forget to put your comments in the comment section. Otherwise, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, watch, and we'll see you same time, same place in the next few days. Have a good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you're watching us from. Bye-bye.